Welcome to the Hanley Effect, a podcast by the Hanley Foundation designed to educate, change minds, and save lives. Our goal is to inspire you, showcase our innovations, and change the conversation about addiction and mental health. Join us as we unravel stories of resilience, recovery, and hope.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to the Hanley Effect. I'm John Dybin.
I'm Rachel Dosicle.
Dr. Dosicle, how are you today?
I'm good, Dr. Dybin. How are you?
I am well as well. My background and my history before I came to Hanley Center, of course, I've been here since the dinosaurs, but before that,
Before the dinosaurs, John, before.
my whole career in mental health, my focus was kids who'd been hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with the kids and worked with the families.
You were at Boys Town for
I was
a while.
at Boys Town for some time. And today in the work that we do, when working with addiction and all the dual diagnosis, we still are working with kids that have been hurt. And our guest today is Brian Martin. And Brian is the founder and CEO of the Childhood Domestic Violence Association, and is really someone who has committed his life and his work. And not just as a CEO, but as someone who advocates through, producing and through, putting information out there. And he's really dedicated himself to these kids. First of all, I just want to say welcome to you, Brian. Thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to hearing about your work and about the message that you bring, both of advocacy and of healing.
And really love your work and the platform that you have. It's a unique combination that you offer, to be able to bring guests on. I think it's just marvelous, and really appreciative to be here, and thank you for your work. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. Us too, I think. So we always like to start with this. We like to know who people are. We'd love for you to tell us about yourself, tell us about your work. And then we always love to know about people's journeys. As you explain your work and who you are and what you do now, share with whatever you're comfortable with, like what was the journey to get you to doing what you do today?
I think a question like that could, you could wind up talking for
take all
40
day.
minutes, and we don't want to do that. I think as it relates to this work, the simple story is that, I grew up in one of these homes, but so did my mom. So did many members of her family. And we didn't quite know it, meaning we didn't know what to call it. And if we didn't know what to call it, then we didn't discuss it. And I think that was an insight that came to me much later in life, well after childhood. And the thing that I think we've been most focused on is, as a society, we've learned that there are these things that happen in our homes in childhood that are called adverse childhood experiences, which some people know about. But for those that don't know about them, there are articles that are written that say, it's the most important study that no one has ever heard of, the adverse childhood experience study. But it's really to kind of use language that's a little bit more simple for someone who might not understand it, or at least language that we use would be, it's childhood home trauma. So things that happen in your childhood home that cause trauma, there are 10 of them that most researchers cite. And this one in particular, childhood domestic violence, is the least known. And that's where our work focuses. It's when you grow up witnessing domestic violence, that's called childhood domestic violence. And through the lens of childhood, domestic violence is violence between parents towards a parent. It can be physical, it can be non-physical. And I say childhood very deliberately because I really don't view it as there's not a child, there's not an adult. It's the same being, right? We just pass through different times. We
Right.
pass through childhood, we pass through adulthood, and then we'll pass on again. And that's not to be spiritual. It's really just to more mean it's the same brain, it's the same eyes, the same ears that, I'm looking at you with the same eyes, with the same ones that saw what you saw. And that's for the same truth for every human on the planet. And our work focuses on elevating the awareness of the issue for those who experienced it and for those who care about those who experienced it.
I love that. It's beautiful. It makes me think of, I think about things that we tend to believe in our society, and that we tend to say. One of the things is time heals all wounds. And as a therapist for a long time, I think that's one of the biggest lies that keeps us hurting. And I love that picture, because so often, and I don't know if you find this, that so many times we as adults will think, you know what, that was something that happened then and it shouldn't affect me now. And yet those studies, and there's so many studies about how those ACEs, those adverse childhood experiences, how they affect
Mhm.
us and how they affect our physical health and how long we're going to live. And so, do you find that same thing, that adults, you'll often find people who think not what you think. You're saying these are the same eyes. You're still the same person. You carry these things, but so often people think, no, 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 that's just when I was a kid, and that shouldn't be affecting me now.
Yeah, it's not like wine. It does not get better with time, right? As they say.
Mm.
The so many uh so many things to say about what you just said, doctor. The this concept that, because I've now turned 18, or I now get a driver's license, or I can vote, or I can drink, or I can be drafted. Um, well, now I'm just an adult and everything shifts. Like that stuff's that's you got to bury that. And if we got a new brain, a new nervous system, a new heart at that time, it's funny. Gillette used to send every man who turned 18 by direct mail a razor.
Hmm.
They turned 18. So then hopefully, like the handle, so hopefully you keep buying the blades. Um, that'd be great if we got rid of all that stuff when we turned 18. Then what you said would be very true.
Right.
Um, but it's it's not only not true, but one of the most important, all the work that I've done is just built on the shoulders of the researchers that have come before me. I study their work. I admire their work greatly. I think the thing that we try to do is, um, one of the first terms that I came upon in this industry was called quipiv. Quipiv. They said, the issue you're talking about, Brian, is called quipiv, and I'm like, okay, I've not heard of quipiv. They said, oh well, it's child witnessed intimate partner violence, and I'm like, that's a terrible brand. People are not going to say that. Like, they're not going to
Yeah.
say that. And then one of the researchers said to me, well, Brian, it's not our job to market it. It's our job to figure it out. I'm like, you're so true. So we help try to put some words around it that might be a bit more palatable, um, a bit more helpful for people. And as one of those researchers was Dr. David Souza. He wrote books on how the brain learns. He actually teaches teachers how to teach so that the brain can more ingest what's being taught. And he shared with me, he said, Brian, one of the weaknesses of the human species is that our brain is uh, develops these beliefs about ourselves before we actually have the fully developed brain to decide what those beliefs should be.
Hmm.
It's
I love
it's
that.
one of the greatest weaknesses of the species, so he said. And then he said, and then even making it even worse is the brain's job is to find evidence of what it believes true or not. So if you happen to be growing up in one of these homes And it's the middle of the night and you can't sleep because you're hearing loud noises that are in the form of arguing, and we know what that sounds like. And the door is closed, and you go to your door and you maybe open it up and you listen and you're waiting, and then it gets worse. And now you hear violence occurring and you don't know what to do. Should you go downstairs? Should you not? And then if you form this belief when you're 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, that, you know, that carried on because of me. I
Mm,
should have been able to stop that. I should have been brave enough to help. I should have, even if I left my room to go help, I should have solved it. I should have figured it out so it didn't happen again. How can this happen? And how can I let it happen? And if you believe that you're terribly guilty because of that, well, then if you follow Dr. Seuss's advice as to, or his work as to the weakness of the species, well, that's it right there. And now, even to double down, your brain's going to keep finding evidence. So now you're 18 and you're just guilty. It is your fault. You, not just that, but you're the type of person that this undeserved guilt is part of your being. And now go get them. You're 18,
right.
but you're an adult now. So none of that matters. Go get the world. Um, when something like that type of guilt kills willpower, how are you ever going to follow through on anything that's important to you, let alone all of the other, what we call it, we know not we call them, the researchers that we worked with say there are a common cluster of negative beliefs that form. There are 10 of them in their lives. And these are what plagues uh, people as they grow through adulthood and they continue to believe these things, which really holds them back from reaching their full potential.
I would love I wanna just pause and reflect on that because I think that was a beautiful explanation. That was a beautiful laying out of, how these things in childhood really continue to impact us, and I think sometimes people, there is a stigma, with going doing therapeutic work or working, and, that was beautifully laying out, you know, what it is that we really come into adulthood with those false beliefs. I'd love to hear more about those 10 beliefs. Are what are some that are really particularly poignant to you? Those lies that we believe and we bring with us into adulthood.
We early on, I had an opportunity to get introduced to in my life to Tony Robbins, and
Mhm.
he I just found his. I wound up getting into marketing professionally, and I asked my boss if I could go to one of his events because I thought he was just a great marketer and understanding why people do what they do. And he said, "Brian, don't submit that request to HR. That's not. Go to the American Marketing Association. Go to brand management." And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I paid for it myself. And in our connecting through that event, I found out that Tony grew up in one of these homes as well. And then I invited him and the 3 leading researchers in the world, meaning the most cited researchers in the world, to come to New York for a summit that we videotaped. And I'll never forget the part of the session where I asked one of the researchers, what is it that people who grow up in these homes tend to believe about themselves? And then they kind of looked at one another. They had never met before this, and they just started talking. And through that session, they really articulated very well what are the most common beliefs that people have. And these are the negative beliefs. We all have negative beliefs, but um, this group, this cohort tends to have more, and they tend to believe them more firmly, and they tend to be similar in orientation. So to answer your question directly, they are, they believe they're guilty. They are, and I can explain why to each, but you can also probably surmise, just in the interest of time, um, they're guilty. They're resentful. They're sad. They're sad. They're angry, and when they get angry, they loop back to being sad because they feel bad about what they did. Um, they're disconnected. They're alone. They feel a bit hopeless. They're fearful. They feel worth less. They feel unloved, unlovable. And then if you feel all this about yourself, no wonder, no matter how you may look physically, you're quite self-conscious. You don't feel attractive. So those are the most common 10.
And one of the things we see is that people who have experienced these adverse childhood experiences want to self-medicate, or in many cases want to self-medicate with drugs or alcohol. And so when our patients come in, um, those 10 that you just cited, we hear those. Our therapists work with those negative beliefs while folks are here in treatment because we know if we don't work through those, even if our detox process gets somebody sober,
Right.
they're not going to be able to stay sober.
It's funny, as you were telling that story, I got a bit of a goosebump, and I got a bit emotional in my eye there for a minute because it's it's this particular adversity. And I'll just say this before I say what I'm going to say. Another piece of research that they shared with me is that if you experience childhood domestic violence, meaning if you grew up in a home where there's domestic violence, more than half of those people, and we're talking about like a lot of people, which we can get into, but more than half of those people experience 5 other adversities in that home.
Right.
Yeah.
So this, if you picture the house has like one of those old antennas on the top of the house. It's like a conduit for all bad things.
Right.
It's not just one thing; it's many things, which makes it more confusing because it's like, how do I separate out what's what? But this particular house where there's childhood domestic violence, and for someone who experienced that, one of the things that permeates through like daily existence for that person is uncertainty, is lack of certainty. And of course, we know certainty is the basis for everything. Certainty is Maslow's bottom, it's the bottom, it's security. Security is certainty. And that is, Dr. Why I teared when you said that, because the addiction, the alcohol, the the drugs, the porn, the anything gives me that certainty
That's right.
that I at least know I'll feel a certain way when I never had any certainty. So this lack of fundamental certainty, I've got to get it somewhere. I can't get it from within me because of what I believe about me. So I've got to go out and get it somewhere. Maybe I get it, you know, Dr. Renee McDonald, who wrote a preface to a book that I wrote, and it's a line that when I read it, I read her preface and I was like, wow. She wrote, they 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 need the 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 approval of others to replace the genuine lack of esteem they have for self. So that certainty needs to come from somewhere. And all of it is an addiction to certainty. It just finds its way through substances, experiences, habits, lack thereof.
Yeah.
And it, it's going back to the real specific thing that you're talking about. Even though there's this cluster, I think it's important to be clear that when you're talking about childhood domestic violence, you're talking about something different from child abuse. You're talking about something different from, uh, you know, just being in an environment where there is that domestic violence, where there is that intimate partner violence, where the people who you rely on for safety are experiencing violence, whether it's screaming or yelling or physical, just being in that environment, it people develop these beliefs. The world is not safe. You just talked about, there's no predictability. There's no, I don't have that certainty. I don't, and the world then is unpredictable. And so just being in the environment and around that, I think, I've met a lot of people who have experienced that, and they will, again, they'll minimize it saying, well, but I wasn't. And though people who grow up in these environments, there's a higher likelihood that they're going to experience physical abuse. They're going to say, "But I didn't, so I should be fine." And what you're focused on is like this: just being in that environment is life changing and facilitates these lies, these false beliefs that have lasting impact.
Yeah, and very well said. And one of our advisors, he's the founding father of modern resiliency theory, Dr. George
Mhm.
Everly. He created a program for us, which is a program that we offer that's accredited, and it's a virtual program through our website, which is cdv.org. The reason why I bring it up is because he uses that exact example that you just mentioned, Doctor. He says the effects of this psychologically, um, biologically, aside from
Right.
the initial impact, um, physical child abuse, there's no difference. And then I can specifically say I have talked to I can't the number of people I've spoken with are certainly in the hundreds. The number of heads I've seen nod are in the tens of thousands, where most of these people would have rather had some type of, if they could have taken the physical abuse for themselves
Yeah.
and just go to sleep, call it a night, and not have it happen, not have to wait, not have to listen, they would have taken it. And it is that's why the awareness of it is really so critical, that they have something to call it. It tends to be the missing puzzle piece. They've been able to reconcile the physical child abuse, the poverty, the emotional abuse, the alcoholism or drug use in the household. And they're like, but geez, my thoughts are unpleasant most of the time, and I don't know why. It's this missing piece because they've not been able to put the words to this. They think that I'm just going to push that down. I'm not going to think about that. But what do you think causes your brain to spin constantly, talk to itself?
Mhm.
And why are your thoughts so unpleasant most of the time? Do you think that's just has nothing to do with this? It must be labeled. It must be acknowledged. You must self-study on this. And then when you're ready, the misconception is that I've got to talk to someone about this. Nobody wants to talk about this. We don't use a lot of social media because you're not going to go thumb up, hey, because everybody's in your feed. And this is a private family matter. And we don't try to battle that. And that's okay. When you're ready to talk to someone, you talk to someone who's super trusting, who can actually let you know that the truth, which is through another's eyes, because conversation transforms the meaning. You're actually not less than, you're actually more than, because what else can possibly, what other obstacle could possibly compare to what you've already gone through, right? Like
One of the
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanna just pause for 1 second. Uh, you are talking about a process toward healing, here, and I what you just said about social media, but really about the smartphone is so powerful. Um, for our listeners, we have many patients who choose to seek treatment places other than here at Hanley because we do not allow folks to have their smartphones, at least in the first part of
Hmm.
treatment. It's something that patients need to earn as they progress through treatment. And I love the very simple but profound explanation that you just gave as one of the reasons why. You know, healing only comes when you can get that brain to stop spinning and spiraling. And there is absolutely no way for that to happen when somebody has that smartphone with them.
That's keeping that, and that, again, it's that hit of dopamine, and that's that hit of certainty.
I love the certainty
It is.
piece
That's right.
that you
That
talked about.
we what do we do on our phone? We go to that which where we are habitually go for certainty, right? Like I go to every time I pick up my phone and like I don't even have the app, but if I type in Google ESPN.com, like, why am I doing that? And I look, I'm like, why am I doing this? And so you're 1,000% right. Not only do we go there for certainty, but then we also experience so much stimuli that triggers the negative.
Well, we are okay. It's my turn to
I
be the
know.
bad guy
John's
because we're
always the bad guy.
actually in our, believe it or not, in our time to wrap up. I would, I think there is so much more, and there's so much that you have, the work that you've done is so important. Can you tell us again, tell our listeners, if they want to learn more about this, where do they get this? Repeat that website again, and how can they learn more about this or get in contact with you?
Yeah, I mean, if there were, if you grew up in one of these homes and this message, or if you believe someone you care or love about has grown up in one of these homes, there are two really simple things that I would recommend to do. The first step would just be to visit cdv.org. So childhood domestic violence, cdv.org. Um, Many people have said as they start scrolling through even the homepage, not only has it read their mind, but it kind of has validated so much in their life. It's a little bit like one of our advisors worked with, PTSD was not discovered until the early 80s, and it gave so many people relief to know, oh my God, that's what it's called. I knew it was something. I knew it was a thing. So just going to that site, mobily or desktop wise, is a great tool. And then a lot of the information, um, all the information really is in a book that we published years ago. All the money, it's sold on Amazon and elsewhere. All the money goes back royalty wise to the nonprofit. So there's nothing for profit here. It's called Invincible: the 10 Lies You Learn Growing Up with Domestic Violence, the Truths to Set You Free. Tony Robbins wrote the forward, and it's really quite beautiful. And if you can either, a lot of people also love to get the audiobook because sometimes it's just easier to listen. So those
Right.
would be the two things that I'd recommend. And all the money, of course, anything that's most of the tools on the website are free. Anything else is just a donation back to the nonprofit.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for that, and thank you for spending your time with us. We always like to let you have the last word, and so we invite you to think about what is one thing that you would want. The audience is broad, and there's a lot of folks out there, including folks who are resonating with what you're saying. What is the last thing, that one thing that you would want our audience to hear from you today?
The thing that just comes to mind is if I did not know of your work before I started researching some of your work. And I think that if anyone in my world uh, needed the type of help you'd provide, I would get them on a flight down to you, or urge them to come to you, because I think your work is uh, based in care, and but also is very fundamentally based in, thank God, mental health is now a word cloud that you see that Google will
Right.
say is searched a lot
Right.
more than it was 10 years ago.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
Thank
Thank you.
thank you so much for that.
This was wonderful.
It was thank you, Dr. D.
Thank you, Dr. D.
Fun as
Yeah,
always.
it was. This was a really, really terrific show.
And I really do hope that everybody goes to that website and just gets a little more familiar with this topic and the influence that it can have on our lives. And for everybody listening or tuning in, thank you so much. We'll see you next time on the Hanley Effect.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for the Hanley Effect. To learn more about our programs, visit hanleyfoundation.org or call 844-502-4673.